Hi everyone. In this video you'll find a tutorial for the emwave software by HeartMath, and I will actually show you the screen of what you're going to be looking for and at when you are doing the emwave. So stay tuned. Just to remind you, the emwave software is measuring your pattern of heart rate variability. So again, if you haven't watched the previous video about what heart rate variability is and coherence is and your patterning is, that's a really important foundation to have before you begin this. So I'm assuming that you have all the information, all the background information and content before you watch this. But just to remind you, heart rate variability is the space between the beats of your heart. Your heart does not beat consistently. There are beat-to-beat changes with every heart rate. It's called heart rate variability. If you plot your heart rate variability over time, the time series graph of heart rate variability begins to make a pattern, and that patterning is what we call your level of coherence. A very smooth, coherent wave is representative of a calm and connected state of being, physiological state of being, and a jagged pattern is representative of a stressed out or anxious state of being. And if you think back to the spiral of becoming, if you jump in at the level of physiology, you can make all kinds of changes in your body that go back and change your emotions, your perception, and your whole way of being. So what this is a way of training yourself and your system to calm down, get centered, focus on emotion, on life-giving emotion, and then have your heart rate variability patterns change, or your level of coherence change, so they begin to reflect a calm and connected state. Okay, so the first thing that you need to know, that again, because heart rate variability is the beat-to-beat changes in your heart rate, getting a good pulse is like the biggest foundation of being able to get an accurate measurement, because if we can't measure the space between the beats if we can't measure the beats, and we don't measure the beats unless we get a good pulse. And so the very first thing, what you're going to do is, the way we get a pulse is you hook up to either a finger sensor or an ear sensor, and what it does is just measure your pulse. And again, we're not really interested in the speed of the pulse, we're interested in the space between the pulse, and it's fed into a complex mathematical formula to tell you your degree of coherence, and it gets to be pretty complex once we get that information. But the most important thing is that you get a good pulse, because if you don't get a good pulse, you're just wasting your time. And so let me show you two different sensors, and please understand it's really important to know the difference between the sensors, because we have finger sensors on some computers and we have ear sensors on some computers. And I can tell you right now, if you try to put the ear sensor on your finger, you're going to break the sensor, and it's really expensive. And so it's really important to understand the difference in the sensors. Plus, you will not get a good reading if you mix them up. So this is what the finger sensor looks like. And it's got a little clear piece of rectangular plastic on this clear piece in there. Again, so it's on a wire, and then this wire goes into the computer. The clear piece of rectangular plastic is the sensor. That's the thing that's going to pick up your pulse. And so what you need to do is you need to put the most fleshy part of your finger on the clear part of the sensor, not way up, because again, it needs to transmit a good pulse, and the fleshy parts of your body carry most blood, and those are the things that are going to transmit a better pulse. So it doesn't matter what finger, and it doesn't matter what hand. I suggest that you put it on your non-dominant hand. In other words, if you're right-handed, you put it on your left hand. If you're left-handed, you put it on your right hand, just because there's usually less movement. There's no magic in what hand you put it on, but there's usually less movement, and the less movement usually will mean that you're going to get a better reading. And so what you do is you put the most fleshy part of your finger on the clear plastic part of the sensor, and then you're going to wrap the Velcro around, and it needs to be snug but not too tight. If it's too tight, it's going to cut off your circulation. If it's not tight enough, you're going to get too much movement. And then you don't have to, usually what people want to do is just put their hands down right away. You don't have to put your hands like down like on the desk. You can just sit with them very carefully in your laps. It can be a relaxed position in your lap. The most important thing is there's not too much movement. So again, this is what a finger sensor looks like. Please understand the difference, because most of the computers will actually have an ear sensor, but there are a few computers that have finger sensors. So this, again, this is what a finger sensor looks like. It's got the Velcro around it. Now please understand the difference with an ear sensor, because you will hurt the sensor if you try to put it on your finger. This is an ear sensor. The ear sensor has a clip, and it just clips onto your ear. Now, if you look, there's a little rectangular, again, piece of clear plastic. That's the thing that picks up the pulse. And so again, that needs to be a fleshy part of your ear. So on your earlobe, it goes on the most fleshy part of your earlobe. If you put it on the cartilage, it's not going to pick up a good pulse. If you have big earrings in your ears, it may not work to use an ear sensor. And that's why we have two different kinds of sensors. But usually the type of sensor is on the computer. So depending on which computer you go on, you might want to pick the computer with the best kind of sensor for you to use. But again, this is an ear sensor. Please don't confuse it with a finger sensor. Most computers have these, and they're very delicate. So it's really important for you to be careful with them. It goes on the most fleshy part of your ear, because again, the most fleshy part of your body is the thing that's going to transmit the pulse. And then you just want to, again, you don't have to go like this. You just kind of sit comfortably, but you don't want to move too much. Okay, so it's just really important to get a good sense, because again, if you don't get good data, you're just wasting your time. So the placement of the sensor is incredibly important. Again, this is what an ear sensor looks like. This is what you can tell the finger sensor because it's got the Velcro on it and it's much bigger. The ear sensor is a clip. If it's a clip, don't put it on your finger. Okay, so once you get the finger sensor or the ear sensor correctly attached to your body, then what you'll do is you'll go down and you'll find the icon. And again, the computers that have the emwave are just a little bit different in design, but somewhere on the icon list you're going to see this heart with a squiggly line. That heart with the squiggly line is the emwave software program. By the way, emwave just means emotional wave, and so you're going to click that and then it will open the screen for you. What you're going to need to do the very first time that you are on the program is go up the first time you're on the program on any different computer. So you're just going to register yourself as a user, but it is computer specific. So if you come in the lab one day and you register on one computer and then you want to use another computer the next day, you're going to have to register again. There is a lot of benefit from using the same computer, and I'll show you that. I'll show you why in a minute. So I will encourage you to use the same computer if you'd like, but some people don't want to because maybe somebody's on the computer they want to use, and so they just rather get it done quicker, but that's totally up to you. So the way you do that is go under the menu at the top of the list, and then you're going to pull down user and go to new. This is something like this is going to come up, and what I want you to do is just delete the name and put your name down. And I don't care what name you put down, because it's not necessarily your name that's important, that you stick to a name. So if you use Mickey Mouse, keep using Mickey Mouse. People sometimes don't want to use their real name, and that's totally fine as long as you're always using the consistent name. And then the other thing that's really important is that you put down, I'm just going to make this up because obviously I wasn't born in 1995, but my son was. So what the date of birth is important, and again, it's more important that you put the year down, and your gender is important, and that's just because again, these are based on heart rate variability data norms, and norms are based on age and gender. You don't have to fill in those. It'll create a user if you don't want to fill in those. It's totally up to you. You don't also need to fill in your email address. And what you're doing to create account means that you're just creating account on the machine. So you're not going to get email sent to you or anything like that. It just means that you're creating a user account on that specific machine. So you're going to create your account. Then what happens is you should see your name up at the top. Now, the next time you come in, what's going to happen is you're going to come to this menu, and there's going to be, this doesn't show it because it's on my office computer, but there will probably be 100 names down here, and you're just going to have to find your name. It's alphabetical. Just find your name and then click on that. So it's really important that you always make sure you're under your name, either by registering yourself as a user or in subsequent times just finding yourself and putting yourself as the user on the machine. And again, if you're doing Mickey Mouse, just go back to Mickey Mouse. I don't care, again, that it's your name on the machine, but it needs to be consistent when you turn in your forms at the end. The other thing that's really important to know is that you should always start at the low challenge level. So what this is doing, what the emwave software is doing, is taking your pulse, and it's again measuring the space between the pulse and putting it into a mathematical formula. And that mathematical formula is basically determining the degree of smoothness of the sine wave, and you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. And so the degree of smoothness is what they define as coherence. And basically, between the challenge levels, they expect a greater and greater and greater degree of smoothness. And so as the challenge levels go up, they get harder and harder and harder to get green. And I'll tell you what that means in a minute. But basically, this is going to tell you whether you're low coherence, medium coherence, or high coherence. And it gets harder and harder to get high coherence as the challenge levels go up, because what it's trying to encourage you to do, again, is get better and better at the software. The software isn't meant to just measure where you are, and this is a really important point. It's meant to be used as a feedback tool. So you try to calm your body down, and at the same time calming your body down, you make a difference on the computer. In other words, the computer is interacting with the emotional calm of your body. So the more you can calm your body down, the more the computer is going to respond. It's like a video game, only it's exactly the opposite. It responds to the more calm you are throughout your physiology. So again, it's not just about measuring where you are. It's about doing tools to be able to calm yourself down. So I'm just going to start myself, and this is going to be hard to talk and do this at the same time, but I'm just going to start and kind of show you what's going on here. So the very first thing it's going to do is it calibrates, and for some reason this one in my office was calibrating slowly, so we'll see if it starts up. And then the first thing that it does after it calibrates is it's going to show my pulse across the bottom chart here. And again, the pulse only goes through once, because then it's going to show you different data. So it will, after it calibrates, it will show it once. And then what happens, again, because coherence is the pattern of your heart rate variability over time. So what it's going to start doing then is it's going to start plotting your heart rate variability over time, and it's going to give us a time series graph here. And that time series graph is going to show us how calm you are, or how stressed you are by how smooth or jagged the patterns are. Okay, so what you're seeing at the bottom is my pulse going across. And then what it's going to do is it's going to be red for a while I'm talking here. What it's doing now is it's taking the pulse and plotting it over time. And so this is my coherence levels, my heart rate variability pattern over time. And the first thing, the very, very, very first thing that's really important to know is that your breathing is one of the first and primary things to get done. So here's a breath pacer. So it'll help you determine how fast or slow your breath should go, and you can calm and use the breath pattern. And then also the worst thing is if you try to use somebody else's breath speed, and so you can speed up or slow down the breath pattern here to be able to make it what's more natural to you. Okay, so what it's doing, and you can see now that I'm just kind of beginning to calm down a little bit, but it's also hard to do this while you're talking. So what it's doing is it's taking all this information and it's determining my degree of coherence. And the way it does that, again, it's hard to visually see, but one of the things that it does is that it will take the information and it'll put it in a bar graph, which is easier to decipher. The bars right here are, the bars represent the whole session. The buttons represent closer to real time. So what you'd like to do, basically what you want to do is you want to get a green button as much as you can do. That's kind of puts it really simply, but that means that your coherence level, again, green is high coherence, blue is medium coherence, red is low coherence, and so you want to try to breathe and relax your eyes and relax your shoulders enough that you're really doing self-calming techniques. Again, it's not about measuring where you are. It's about trying to change what's going on the machine just by the way you're breathing and the way you're relaxing. Now, again, it's really hard to do this while I'm talking, so you might not get a fair accurate. The other thing that's really important to know is first of all, this right here is your accumulated coherence. Basically, you want this to keep going up and up and up, because what that's showing is that your coherence level is increasing, and you want to also keep it in the zone here. And another important thing to know here is the sound. The sound is incredibly important to know about, because the sound, some people don't want to watch the screen, but they want to know where they are. And so the sound will tell you where you are by the tone of the beep. So if it's a high tone, it's high coherence. If it's a medium tone, it's medium coherence. If it's a low tone, it's low coherence. And most of the machines in the Mind and Heart Lab will also have headphones, so you can hear this tone without everybody else in the lab hearing it. And so so this is what it looks like now. And if I'm just going to show you this for a minute and see. Okay, so basically that's how it works. Now, a lot of people don't want to be watching, I'm just going to stop it for a minute. A lot of people don't like to watch this screen. In fact, a lot of people, it makes them more nervous to watch the screen than not. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some different options. Now, the important thing to know is that you're going to print this screen and bring this screen back to me. And that's what counts as your final. You also will write 2 or 3 sentences about each session. Again, you are required to do 10 sessions. If you're in my class, if you're in Dr. Fish's class, it's a different requirement. But if you're in my class, you're required to do 10 different sessions for 10 minutes. And those sessions need to be spread out over the semester. So in other words, you should do like 2 a week for 5 weeks, you know, or maybe spread it out even more. I'm not sure how many weeks of the semester are left, but you should shoot for at least about 2 a week for 5 weeks. I won't accept more than 3 in 1 week, and that's because it's like exercise. The idea is you get better at it when your body adapts over a longer period of time. If you wanted to get fit, you wouldn't sit for 3 weeks and then go work out as hard as you could work out 1 week and expect to be fit. It needs to be done over a period of time, and this is the same thing. You're working on your emotional fitness. Okay, so a couple other the really important things to know is if you go up here under the balloon game, it's going to give you a different screen This different screen is really helpful for people that don't want to be watching the heart screen. This right here is what we call the coherence coach. Now, and what you'll do is you'll click on whichever one you want to go to of these, or you can do several. The coherence coach will actually walk you through the whole, how to breathe, how to focus, and because again, it's the foundational importance of doing this is understanding that it's, again, like exercise, your goal is to be on here, but yet doing self-calming techniques. And it's just measuring how successful you are at the self-calming techniques. It's not just meant to measure where you are emotionally. It's meant to respond to how you change your emotional and relaxed state. So the coherence coach will actually walk you through it. It's a guy, and he'll walk you through how to breathe and how, what to think about. And also the ball goes up and down. And so you can follow the ball for your breath. Also with the coherence coach, again, just like the other breath pacer, it's really important to know that at the bottom of the coherence coach, there is a breath pacer. So you can always speed up or slow down that ball. It needs to go with what your natural breathing pattern is. Okay, so then the balloon game, the garden game, and the rainbow game, these are all games. And again, they're very different than most video games. They will respond to how calm you get, which is actually the opposite of any other regular video game. So basically, you are trying to, by how calm you get, you're making the balloon go up. The problem is if you start getting less coherent or less calm, the balloon will start going down. And it goes up and it starts traveling, and then there's going to be a house and then a building, and you're just going to be more and more challenged to get that machine or get the balloon up and over the obstacles that are in your way. And again, if you get incoherent, the balloon starts going down. And again, they're not great graphics, but it is responding to what your body is doing. It's a good it's a really good challenge game because it's a little bit longer. First of all, a couple things about the games. You should not start a game unless you're 50% out of the red. And what I mean by that is your coherence level, it doesn't have to be 50% green, but the machines are going to respond to your coherence level. If it's not 50% out of the red, the games aren't going to respond. You're just going to be sitting there and watching either a balloon that's not going anywhere or a black and white garden game. So it's really important that you make sure that you are 50% out of the red before you start a game. And again, the balloon game will go up. If you're going to do the games, I suggest that you start with a garden game. And the reason why is it's a shorter game, so it's easier to keep your coherence level up. It's also, the garden game, what happens is color comes to the garden. And so when color comes, you feel good. And the more you feel good, the more coherent you get. And so then the more color comes, and then nothing gets taken away. Here, if you get incoherent, the balloon goes down. With a rainbow game, if you get incoherent, the rainbow starts going away. What happens is the rainbow starts coming down to the pot of gold for the more coherent you get. But if you start getting incoherent, the rainbow will start going away. For the garden game, nothing gets taken away. It's a shorter game, and it just makes you feel good. And the better you feel, the more color is going to come, and it's just a nice game. When you come out of these games, the games will stop, and it's important to know also that they're different lengths. So if you're coming in for my class and I am requiring you to do 10 minutes and you do the garden game, it's only 3 minutes, you're going to have to do something to make up for the remaining minutes, and you'll just have 2 printouts instead of 1. But what happens when you come to the end of the game, then you just come back up to the heart icon. This is really important to know because people think they lose their data. You come back up to the heart icon, and it goes back to this regular screen. Now, if I was doing one of the games, the screen would have been completely filled, and I would have had the data I need without having to watch it. These right here, the visualizers are really cool. It's just graphics with music. And again, if you're going to play the music, a couple things. You need to make sure the sound is on. You also need to make sure the earphones are on so you don't just disrupt other people in the lab. But with the visualizers, they're just really cool. Some people, again, don't want to watch the heart rate variability screen, and they just kind of zone out and watch the graphics. And so you listen to the music, watch the graphics, but you have in the background, this heart rhythm pattern is going on all along. And so what happens is then after you're done with the visualizers, you just turn on the heart, again, click the heart icon and the heart rhythm page will come up. Nothing will come up here. Oh yeah, here we go. So, and these will also, this is where it collects your data over time. So again, I just had one session here, and if I click that session, it'll come back up. But what's really cool is if you're on the same computer all 10 times, you can get a bar chart where they've got all 10 sessions here, and it shows every session. So you're going to see the difference in the different sessions. Sometimes people will see constant improvement, and uh-oh, here comes a midterm, and they'll go back down. Or it's just really interesting to see your progress over time. And most people will progress over time and be able to see a real difference in their different sessions. So that's the benefit of using the same machine every time you come in, because the data is collected machine specific. And so you need to be on the same computer if you want to see these over time. And again, then what you'll do is at the end of a session, and again, this across are the minutes. So you can tell when you get to 10 minutes, and then you just that's all you need is to have 10 minutes. And so, a lot of times people will bring this into me and say, I don't understand what this means. And I'll say, it'll show really calm for a while, and then it'll be, or I can look here, like here at 1 minute and 30 seconds, I was probably getting excited saying something and my coherence level went down, and then it started going up, and then it started going down again. So you can see what was happening during certain minutes. Sometimes students will come in and say, I don't understand what this means. And I'll say, because they'll be going up and up and up, and all of a sudden a big dive will happen about 3 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever. And I'll say, wow, so what happened at 4 minutes? Oh yeah, somebody dropped their books and it scared me. I mean, it's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. It's really cool, because if you're really able to engage in it, you can see the difference. A lot of times students will come in and they'll be really stressed out, and it'll be really red for a while, and then they'll calm down, and they can just see. You can visually see. I mean, the nice thing about this is you can visually see when you begin to be physiologically responding to some of the self-calming techniques that you're doing. And so then for my class, all I do is require a printout. So you would go under File and go Print. It's really important that you don't have HRV clicked, because if you have HRV clicked, it's going to be several pages, and we don't want several pages. So you don't have HRV picked, and then you don't really have to have this one done either, and just click OK, and then it'll print up. And in if you're in the lab, there's one laptop that you actually have to pick it up and plug it into the computer, because we can't get wireless in the lab. But other than that, the other two computers, the bigger computers, are actually attached to printers themselves, and so you just hit print. Then for me, all you do for me is collect 10 of those printouts, write a couple of sentences, and you can actually write it on your printout. Write 2 or 3 sentences about how you felt about your session. How was it? Could you calm down? And after a while, again, you're going to start seeing patterns and all that kind of stuff. And so you just kind of write a couple of sentences about your experience. And that in itself is the key, because in the syllabus, I'll say write a 1-page reflection. That is your reflection. You've got 10 different dates with 2 or 3 sentences just about how your session went. That is your reflection, and that's all I need. Because again, for this project, again, for my class, you have an option of 3 different things for your final. This option, it's really about the time you're putting in, because you're coming into the lab at least 10 different times. 10 different times for credit, but I got to tell you that some people fall in love with it and make such a big difference in their life that they come in a lot more than 10 times. But you need 10 times to get the full credit for the final. And so you'll just, that's you're really getting the credit by the time you're putting in. One more thing I need to say is if there are a lot, you can see a few blue streaks here. If there are a lot of blue or red streaks here, it means that for some reason it's not getting a good pulse. I was kind of moving around too much, and so it wasn't getting a good pulse. If there's too many blue or red streaks here, you need to reposition the pulse, because if it gets a bad pulse, it's just bad data. And probably, I can't see where it is, but when it starts getting a bad pulse, it starts getting bad data, is when this starts going down, because it's not getting a good read, so it'll be a bad coherence read, even if it's not in your body. But again, this is all that I expect you to print out. So again, just to recap, again, coherence is defined by the pattern of your heart rate variability. This is the variability right here. You know, if it's variability if it works at 50 beats a minute, 60 beats a minute, 70 beats a minute, but this is the patterning over time. So this is my coherence level detected by this being put into a mathematical formula by telling me how smooth this is. I mean, you can kind of visually see it, but it gets to be a pretty intricate mathematical formula to really tell me how smooth this is. And the smoother it is, the more coherent I am. So again, and that is reflected by these bars. It's reflected by the buttons in real time, or close to. It's a couple seconds lag, so you're more really concerned about the buttons. It takes longer to change the bars once you're into a session, because again, this is the average of the whole session, and you want to see this hopefully keep going up and up and up and up. And if you get, first of all, let me say this, it's really rare for people to get, you know, huge levels of green the first couple of times they're on this. And but if you do, you can go up a challenge level. I don't expect you to have to stay at that low challenge level, but the only reason why you would want to go up is if you're getting high levels of green and you want to challenge yourself more. So basically, in a nutshell, what you want to do is calm yourself enough that you can get enough green. Now again, there is a lot of individual variability. In other words, not everybody's the same. So you shouldn't be comparing yourself to other people. You should be trying to get better than you were the time before, or at least begin to establish patterns in that direction. So, you know, your goal again is just to be using this as a feedback tool to kind of get better and better and better at your own self-calming techniques. So don't compare yourself to another person, because some people just have natural higher level of coherence. So some people will get on this machine and just be green, and some people won't. And it's not, you know, you just shouldn't be comparing yourself to other people. Your goal is just to get a little bit better yourself. Another really important thing is heart rate variability is really sensitive to anything that's going to change your heart rate. So in other words, it's really sensitive to caffeine. It doesn't mean you can't have caffeine on it, but you shouldn't have more than your usual. I mean, I have a cup of coffee every morning, but if I have 2 cups of coffee and I get on the emwave, then it's crazy. If I have my regular, then it's totally fine because my body's used to it. It is also really sensitive to some medication. So any medication that might be changing your heart rate for one reason or another, it might not respond well to that. So just understand that. And again, if you got to have coffee, it might be a good idea to do it after you have the emwave, or kind of space it out. And it's really, you know, it is measuring your emotional state. So if you come in and you're all, you know, keyed up, it's going to measure that. But again, it's probably the best thing to do to calm yourself down. Many students will come in and do this before they take a midterm, before they take a final, before they have to do a presentation, because it calms you down. Because again, if you remember back to the lecture about heart coherence, this patterning is sent through your whole body. It's sent through your whole body, and at some level your whole body is detecting the pattern of this. So if it's really chaotic like it was over here, my whole body was picking that up. Every cell of my body is picking that up. It starts getting a little more calm, and my whole body can begin to calm down because it feels my electrical patterns calming down. And it goes right back to the most reactive part of your brain. So your brain senses the anxiety level in your body, and it's a feedback loop. So it's going to deliver more of the same. And so what this is doing is this is jumping in at the level of your physiology, calming your body down, which changes that whole spiral of becoming. So again, it begins to change your whole perception. It begins because it's a feedback loop. Your physiology determines your emotion determines your physiology. It's a total feedback loop. And this is jumping in at the level of our physiology to be able to change our emotional state.